For months, critics around the world have been asking the same question: when is someone finally going to challenge Benjamin Netanyahu directly instead of simply allowing him to repeat the same talking points unchallenged? Well, that moment may have finally arrived. What you're about to watch is a fascinating exchange in which a journalist looks Netanyahu directly in the eye and raises concerns that many people across Europe, the United States, and other parts of the world have been openly discussing for months. Whether you agree with those criticisms or not, there's no denying that this conversation touches on issues that have become central to the global debate surrounding Israel, Gaza, and international public opinion. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now here's what makes this clip so interesting. It's not just the questions being asked, it's the reaction they provoke. Because throughout this interview, you can see a clear clash between two completely different narratives. On one side, you have Netanyahu defending Israel's actions and attempting to explain his government's position. On the other, you have a journalist pressing him on the growing criticism coming from around the world and the perception that international opinion is shifting in a significant way. And as this exchange unfolds, pay very close attention to the people sitting alongside him. Seriously, keep an eye on the hosts positioned on the left side of the screen. Sometimes in interviews, the most revealing moments aren't even the words being spoken. They're the facial expressions, the reactions, the raised eyebrows, and those brief moments when someone hears an answer and doesn't seem entirely convinced by it. Watch carefully as the discussion becomes more intense. Notice how the atmosphere in the room changes. Notice how certain responses are received. Because as Netanyahu attempts to defend his position and push back against criticism, the reactions around him may end up telling their own story. And that's exactly why this clip has generated so much attention online. It's not just about the argument itself. It's about what happens when a political leader faces direct scrutiny and is forced to respond to concerns that millions of people have been debating across social media, television, and public discourse for months. Let's get into it.
I have some sympathy with some of what you've said. Let me give you another way, which is that many people around the world see the state of Israel as a country that is exclusively using military force, that has killed 70,000 people in Gaza, that is doing nothing to create a sustainable future for people there. That is a country, you've been accused of being a war criminal. That if you went to go to several countries in Europe, you're going to get arrested. This is not just mad campus radicalism. This is a feeling around the world. You said it yourself to us just now. In public opinion around the world, Israel is doing very poorly. And it's doing very poorly because people see a country that is behaving in a way that is not compatible with being a liberal democracy. And therefore, I think you have a problem. I think that loss of public opinion, what struck me from your autobiography was how subtly and for how long you have understood this. You know that political power comes from public opinion, and you know that you need to win the battle of public opinion, and you're losing it. You've absolutely lost it in Europe, but much more worryingly for you, you're losing it in America. And I think that what you've just told me about fanaticism is true in part, but it is not going to shape public opinion. People are going to roll their eyes and say, he's saying that anybody who says anything critical about Israel is anti-Semitic. He's giving this large, this story about fanaticism, and he's not accepting the fact that Israel is behaving in a way that we think is incompatible with the kind of liberal democracy that he claims.
Well, democracies that fought the battles from World War II, Afghanistan to Iraq and so on, the ratio of combatants to non-combatants killed was 6-1, 7-1. In Gaza, because Hamas was forcing people to stay in urban areas at gunpoint, the ratio is about 1.5 to 1. And we lost a lot of soldiers because we didn't carpet bomb.
That is disputed, Prime Minister.
We didn't do...
People have different ratios as well, including...
I'm telling you, you don't actually, but that's not the point. It certainly wasn't 6-1 or 7-1, and we certainly didn't carpet bomb, which we could have done right away. We've lost a lot of people by my refusal and the IDF's own mores in making sure that doesn't happen. Now, if you have the densest urban warfare theater in history, with 500 kilometers of terror tunnels underneath, 50 meters below, 50 meters above, everything booby-trapped, and you don't come in and just bomb the place to smithereens, which we didn't. I mean, we had everything booby-trapped. We moved the population out, and then you have to fight the Hamas in there. The ratios in Mosul, the ratios in Fallujah, the ratios elsewhere, there's nothing comparison, and that was nothing compared to what our soldiers, our brave soldiers, had to face in Gaza. So, I dispute the fact. The argument that you put forward is being put forward. It doesn't make it true. What is true is that Israel is fighting these worst killers, these people who took not only beheaded our men, raped our women, and then murdered them, burned our babies alive, and took 255 hostages, which we took out. Nobody believed that we got them out. These are barbarians, and they're given a free look. I have demonstrations on behalf of Hamas. Notice that they're burning the flag of Israel, the flag of the UK, the flag of Israel, and the flag of America. When you have pro-Israel demonstrations, they wave Israeli flags, they wave American flags, they wave British flags. These people are against you. Whether you recognize it or not, they will sweep away your societies, your freedoms, your ideas, the values that we cherish exactly
Prime
as you
Minister,
do.
it really isn't just extreme radicals. There are huge numbers of people who are concerned about Israel's behavior. Frankly, including people like me.
Well, I think that if Britain was invaded, forgive me, if Britain was invaded and you had the equivalent, in Britain, your population is what, 65 million, something like that, 60 million, right? So you're about 6 times our size. So if you had, on one day, about 8,000 Brits murdered, mutilated, raped, and kidnapped, and they came right next to London, what would you do? We know what you did. We know exactly what Britain did, and I don't hold Churchill or the British government or the British people who supported him responsible for saying you shouldn't have acted that way. You bombed the living daylights out of German cities and out of.
As this interview continued, one thing became impossible to ignore: the growing debate over Israel's image on the world stage and whether public opinion is shifting in ways that political leaders can no longer dismiss. For years, support for Israel from many Western governments appeared relatively stable, but today, the conversation looks very different. Across social media, news programs, university campuses, political circles, and public forums, people are openly debating Israel's actions, questioning long-standing policies, and demanding greater scrutiny of decisions being made by political leaders. And nowhere is that discussion more significant than in the United States. The United States has historically been one of Israel's strongest allies, which is exactly why changes in public sentiment there attract so much attention. Whether you agree with those changing views or not, it is clear that more Americans are engaging in discussions about the conflict than ever before. And politicians on both sides of the aisle are increasingly being asked where they stand. That's why moments like this interview matter. Because throughout the exchange, Netanyahu repeatedly attempted to frame the conflict through his own lens, emphasizing security concerns, regional threats, and the challenges facing Israel. His supporters will argue that those concerns are legitimate and deserve serious consideration. His critics, however, see something very different. They believe that many of the concerns being raised internationally are not being fully addressed, and that public frustration continues to grow because people want direct answers to difficult questions. That's what made this interview so noteworthy. The journalist wasn't simply moving on to the next topic. He continued pressing the issue and bringing the discussion back to public opinion and international perception. And you could almost feel the tension building as the conversation unfolded. What stood out most wasn't necessarily that the two men disagreed. Political interviews are full of disagreements. What made this exchange different was the persistence, the refusal to simply accept a talking point and move on, the determination to keep asking the questions that many viewers themselves have been asking. Now, it's important to remember that debates surrounding this conflict generate strong opinions from every direction. People look at the same events and often reach completely different conclusions. That's why discussions like this become so heated and why interviews like this spread so quickly online. But regardless of where someone stands politically, one thing is hard to deny: public scrutiny is increasing. And world leaders are facing tougher questions than ever before. And that's exactly why this interview has resonated with so many people. For supporters of the journalist, It represented accountability and direct questioning. For supporters of Netanyahu, it represented a leader defending his country's position under intense pressure. Either way, it was a remarkable exchange, and one that has sparked conversation far beyond the studio where it took place. But what do you think? Did the journalist ask the questions that needed to be asked, or do you think Netanyahu effectively defended his position? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next political commentary and analysis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.